which we call, as mentioned, Makahalar Bay, and integrating this in our landscape, the CDO River Basin Management Council, and how we link these two ecosystems as one in terms of environmental governance, which we call now the RQ. No? So one landscape, one seascape, one environment, and hopefully you will agree at the end of the talk. So it was hard for us to get people to buy into environment, and finally the concept of ecosystem services is what made it possible for people to understand how important ecosystem and environment is. And let me just go through a bit on this advocacy of ours. What are really these ecosystem services? These are what we call as the direct and indirect contribution of ecosystems to human well-being. I put in the Bisaya version because we're from Mindanao. So when you say the direct and indirect, the indirect one is not so popular with the people. What they see mostly is what we call this first group of services called provisioning. No? These are the products you can easily see from the ecosystem, like this one: fish, water, timber. No? Another set is regulating services. And these are the benefits we obtain from the regulation of these different ecosystem processes. It's not very obvious, but very much important. Like the coastal protection from strong waves, you have the carbon sequestration, regulating the climate with the oceanic waters, and other maintenance like the water quality and all these cycles. No? So this is very much important, but not so obvious. The third is also, again, not so obvious, but very much critical, again, for the production of all the other ecosystem services. And these are the supporting ones, like photosynthesis, which we take for granted, is an example. The marine habitat, which house the different denizens of the seas, is again another example. The last one, which is gaining popularity here in the Philippines, is the cultural services. These are the intangible benefits in the form of non-material spiritual, inspirational, and educational experience. And this is where recreational or ecotourism is it falls under, and I guess we should have fun in the Philippines, no, as the tagline of DOT. But apart from that, especially in Mindanao, we have so many tribes from our indigenous communities. And for them, nature is very spiritual. So their lives are so intertwined. So this is a very important service for them. So these are the four types of ecosystem services that we people get to understand, and they get to commit them to protect nature, because what's important is to ensure the flow of these ecosystem services. And one thing to do that is to manage the environment. And let me fly you in to where we are in northern Mindanao. This is Cagayan de Oro at the center, and Makahalar Bay, as mentioned. We've realized that when you talk about environmental governance, we have to work with the LGUs because the environment is under their jurisdiction. But then the LGU has the power, yes, and it has the leadership, but it lacks the knowledge. And this is where our role then as the academe, because when we created this, we were in part of the university, is we had this very technical oceanographic study where we popularize, and this is an example of the knowledge products that we've been making to get these people to join us in the advocacy. So here it shows, for example, the flow of the water during Amihan and Habagat, which is the monsoon. So you see that one fish from one LGU, depending on the season, actually provides the juveniles to the next or to the adjacent municipality. So this was a convincing material for all the mayors, because we told them that it's not fair for one LGU, for example, which is Laguindingan, where our airport is, to invest too much of its time, of its efforts, of its budget for the restoration of the marine environment, when the beneficiary is also the other LGUs, like in this case, Kilukitan, whatever the monsoon is. For Binuangan, which is, as you can see, during Amihan, it provides the seedlings to Opol and El Salvador, because in these cases they were wondering how come they will still have their stocks even if they glean, if they collect. It's because of the interconnectivity of the whole bay. Because in this case, the fish don't care of any political color once they cross boundary to the next LGU. So we did all this scientific support, and then we also did the development side. So we finally were able to get the 12 municipalities and one component city, and of course the charter city of Cagayan, and the province of Misamis Oriental. And here you have Father Villarin, then the president of Xavier, former president of Ateneo de Manila as well, and the governor and the different mayors and legislators. So we went through a process from networking, baseline profiling, until finally we were able to create this alliance of local government units called the existing. Until now, we are housed in the Bureau of Fisheries Regional Office, because in terms of the national government agency, we're working closely with PFAR. And we are structured that the governors and the 14 mayors is basically the council, but we have a project management office, and I'm heading it for now. But we work with the different LGU representatives and department heads with these different technical working groups, covering from coastal law enforcement to information campaign, habitat and resource management, the monitoring and evaluation planning, and the policies and the governance aspect. So we are financially supported by the annual LGU contribution from these members. So part of our role as the academe is also to check what's going on under the waters in the marine environment. And we made this study with the funding from the Department of Science and Technology. And we found out that over 10 years, a number of the corals have died, and the condition has changed from what we call a good category of coral cover to a lower level of fair condition. But we found out that majority of this dead coral cover were basically because of the siltation, sedimentation coming from the uplands. So we thought that whatever we do in the marine, unless we work upland, whatever marine protected area will not be so effective. So we decided to go up, and our landscape is called the Cagayan de Oro River Basin. As you can see, it has a funnel topography already. So meaning to say, whatever water from the upland municipalities by nature or by topography, by geography, will really go down to the reef. So you see the ridges and the reefs connected by the rivers. So we had to talk to the different LGUs and insist that when we talk about environment, it should not be considered political. Because as you can see, Cagayan de Oro cannot by itself separate when it comes to environmental governance, because the flooding that is experiencing is actually coming from the waters from the 3 upland municipalities. So, in terms of the ecosystem services, our advocacy then was we wanted to do something about the flooding that we are experiencing for so many years. So we actually have the perfect recipe for flooding in our area. So you see we have these 2 headwaters. It's called Kitanglad and Kalatungan, KitKat for short. It's very, in terms of geomorphology, it's very steep. So it's very precarious. Second, there are so many upland activities that have sort of denuded the slopes, especially, and also some plantations. So with all this combined, we are getting a number of this land that is carried in by the water, going midstream. And along the way, we also have some minings along the slopes. So with all that, they will all go into the sea, And what used to be a very thriving community in the coastline, you could see the plume of the sediments coming from the 2 major rivers, will actually result to a barren marine ecosystem or marine environment that would not be able to provide the services, ecosystem services, if it is a healthy ecosystem. So we focus now on the regulating service on flood and erosion. Especially in 2011, we had the misfortune of Sendong, which caused so many loss of lives, around almost 2,000 and around 10,000 persons missing until now. So we don't want to experience this. And actually, we will have the 10 years memorial of Sendong in December 30. So again, going through the map, we are showing that we need to really work, no, as a R-Cube to reach River Reef. And then we realized that we need as many people to be involved in the river basin or in the environment, because the government alone cannot do it. So in the landscape, there has been a very good initiative by the Archdiocese of Cagayan de Oro, headed by Bishop Ledesma, with our regional DNR, Region 10. And with the different sectors, we came up with this management council, which is comprised of 8 sectors coming from the national government, regional offices, the academe, the indigenous groups, as I've mentioned, the media and communications, and the business groups. And we work as well since 2010 through, again, similarly with the technical working groups, and we have 6. And these are all managed by the different members of the council. We are a 59-member organization that's very loose, very voluntary in terms of nature. So, but then we realized that apart from working on our river basin, in terms of the R-Cube approach, a number of these sediments are actually coming from the bigger adjacent river basin called the Taguluan River Basin. So again, we are working with them, helping them set up like what we have set up with the CDO River Basin. And DNR 10 is basically following the model we've made with the CDO RP. So we have also reached the stage where we have come up with our theory of change. Now, we had the support of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature in the Netherlands since we started, and since for over 10 years now. And one thing that was new was they helped us bring together the different stakeholders of the 2 river basins and the coastal area. And we wanted to see the change that we wanted. So basically, we wanted SHIELD, no? It's an acronym for a sustainable and healthy ecosystem in an empowered community. And there are 3 major strategies that we need to do. One is we have to strengthen the governance aspect, which is this one. You can see where we are now is we're trying to align the different management plans of these different landscape, seascape, so that we can implement an R-Cube approach to the regulating service that we are after as a priority. So, where we are now in terms of the governance, there's a sponsored bill by our Congressman Rufus Rodriguez, where he wanted to create this development authority. So we're working closely with him in terms of strengthening this and beefing up the policy so that it also is aligned to the existing efforts that we have. So it's now in the stage of the committee, and we don't know how it will proceed, if it will get approved before the change of the leadership. So the proposed powers and functions are similar to a development authority, and hopefully this would also address, a new type of environmental governance that we should practice in the Philippines. But apart from our region 10, we are also working in the bigger adjacent region, the Caraga region. It's called the Agusan River Basin, and here we help them similarly. They have a bigger management council. It's 3 sub-river basins, but here we showed them through science again that the Agusan Marsh, which is like the crown jewel of the Agusan River Basin, its ecological function is supposed to be the sink for all this water that comes from the different municipalities upland, and it goes through the marsh. But what happened is that too much siltation has made the marsh shallow. So now, instead of a sink, the water, when we have very strong rains, will now go straight from the marsh to the lowland municipalities and to Butuan City, where they also experience a very bad flooding, and then back into the reefs. So, so this is an approach that we wanted as many of the river basins and integrated landscape seascape would replicate, but so many of our activities are just also piloted. But we're working with a number of river basins to learn from them, and also to also inform them or tell stories of our challenges and also successes. So with this governance already in place, although there's still work, we realized that apart from that, we need to really do the hard infrastructure in a way. So we have to do ecosystem restoration. So in our case, it's just a big job. It's not just supposedly DNR, but all of us, since we are benefiting from all these services. So we have prioritized high-risk areas, we call it, based on the level of erosion, the slope, and all. So those in orange are the priority areas. And we also plotted the restoration efforts, especially of our DNR, Region 10, like the National Greening Project, and all the other private and other agencies' efforts. And you can see those green polygons. We still have a long way to go, because although we did some work, we haven't really hit the high-risk areas. So we will still experience all this flooding and erosion that we have experienced for the past years. So how do we do that? It takes money, yeah, for the restoration. So the multi-sectoral body like the Cagayan CDO RBMC or the Makahalar Bay, we actually act like a funnel. So we have this support again from the IUCN, where they taught us how to do this landscape investment tool, where we were able to identify the sources of investments and finance, and then focus them on the priority that we have in terms of program. Of course, what we wanted is ecosystem restoration. So we have support from the local government units, the business sector, even banks, the institutional funding agencies and investors, and also foundations. So how do we do it? We have what we call as the restoration models, and we package it ensuring that we have the three P's. One is we have a protection of the environment. Second is we have a product. So we have to intercrop our restoration model with a commercially viable agriculture product to ensure that the people, the third P, working on the actual restoration, we also have a alternative income or a supplemental income, so that it's not just the environment protected, but as well as the people doing it, as well as us in the whole landscape. So if you look at the design here, for example, we're working with experts in the World Agroforestry Center in Mindanao. This is the model for riparian buffer, meaning rivers. And here you see that we start off with the grass, which will hold the soil, and then the critical trees, and in this case the intercropping is with fruit trees, nangka, and also later when you further into the river bank, we have either cacao, banana. So we did this in Agusan River Basin in Compostela with the support of the Netherlands government and the Wetlands International. And after we tried this in 2016, and this is last year, and this is Manong Perlito, where what used to be a very eroded riverbank in Moncayo is now with the grasses, and you can see the fruit trees, no, and the bananas that is part of the design. So of course he's very happy, but this is only a demonstration and piloting site. So again, it's a long stretch of riverbank that the River Basin Management Council have to work on as well. So the other method is on the slope. That's supposed to be a slope forest restoration. And in this case, it's still an intercropping, but since it's at higher elevation, the intercropping is with coffee or with cacao also. So again, this is now in the lower part of the river basin in Balacogon. And you can see here Manang Sita, who's very happy with her logbook, with the recording. checking out the cacao. And we have also supported them in terms of not just the marketing of the raw cacao, but also the post-processing of tablea and other choco products. The other model that we are working on is called the Kauyagan Upland. So it's more a transformational business partnership. But scientifically, it works on an ecological succession model. I don't want to go very technical, but they introduce a species. It's called the Kalyandra because in the upper parts of the river basin, mostly in Bukidnon, it's very hard to control the weeds. You have to use fertilizer. So in this case, we use the calandra, which will actually grow over the weeds, so the weeds will die. And then that's the time they will plant the indigenous trees. So similarly, there will be an intercropping of commercially viable crops. And in this case, they have been planting, apart from abaca, the very expensive rice. I forgot the name of the rice, but that's very expensive in the shop, especially in Manila. So again, this is Managlinda who's very happy because she didn't expect that even in her old age she would be able to sell, no, the some of the root crops, and I just cannot remember the name of that expensive rice. So we wanted to focus on ecosystem restoration, and we realized that we really need to get as much funds as possible. So we introduced another concept, Adlai. Thank you, Bensha. It's called Adlai rice. This is a new concept. It's an innovative finance mechanism. It's called PES, Payments for Ecosystem Services, where we actually reward the environment for providing us these services. So let me expound on this. This is another knowledge product of ours. Again, another bestseller when we wanted people to understand why they need to protect the environment. When you pay your water bill, you're actually paying for the pumps, for the faucets, for the meters, whatever operational support to ensure that water from the ground is accessible. And when you open your tap, you have water. What is missing in this picture is that this water is not actually coming from the water district. It's coming from the ground, because this water that is being pumped in the aquifer can only be recharged when the watershed has the vegetation it needs to ensure that the water doesn't go as surface runoff, becomes flood, but actually goes into the underground, part of the aquifer. So this is what we mean by payments for ecosystem services. Do we even reward the environment for ensuring the water supply? So what we did was, Cagayan de Oro, as early as 2007 actually, has been identified as one of the water stress cities in the Philippines then. So as early as then, we knew about it, but there was not much activities done. So this is again what we're trying to address now. We will not wait until we run out of water. So we have so many modalities of the PES that we're doing now here in our Cedar River Basin, coming from the LGUs and coming from the business. So let me just go through each. One is Cagayan de Oro. It took us 6 years to lobby for this. Finally, we were able to get the city council to allocate 10 million. And this is a novel approach, and it's also first time, because usually the government doesn't allocate just for restoration. So in this case, this is on top of the budget of the environmental department that they have. So what we did is we have a champion. We had to work on a champion to push it, but we also have our multi-sectoral group, coming from the different sectors that are always there in the council when we lobby this. In terms of the Upland municipality, this is one of the PES where they have put a water tariff. It's not new, but it's being done but by only a few municipalities, where they use the water tariff, the add-on, to protect the watershed. In this case, it's one of our headwaters, the Mount Calatuhan, but it has been on hold for now because they're fixing their waterworks. And again, we have our local champion. This is the adjacent upland municipalities, and it's working with the other Kitanglad, no, headwaters. Similarly, it's still water tariff. We have innovative business model, and this is it has been running for a while, so it's a champion in terms of the business sector. And this is a Unifruti, an agro-industrial plantation, where they have this annual support to the indigenous groups where they plant their banana and their pineapple, because they also realize that if they don't protect the environment, the whole value chain, the water supply and all this. So the local indigenous tribes get some support, not just for environmental protection, but also other initiatives that they like to do. Like they have scholarships, they have tribal structures that they made as part of these rewards, for using their ancestral domain. This is a new one. It's because most of the PES are only from one municipality, and this is a river basin-wide level where the indigenous groups in Mount Kalatuhan, the one of the headwaters, are protecting their ancestral domain to ensure that we in the downstream area in CDO and the mid-municipalities have in time the regulating service of regulating erosion and flooding, and also the provisioning service of water to address our water insecurity. So the buyers of these ecosystem services are actually the businesses and the communities in Cagayan de Oro. But what's new here is that there is a third-party fund manager, which is again very innovative and only done here. And this is the Xavier Science Foundation. And the council works as a monitoring body. Because we realize that sometimes it's hard for the indigenous groups to work closely with the business sector. So the XSF, the foundation, is the middle man, sort of, in this case, working on the contracts and the other paperworks and the reports. This is one that we're working in terms of a social insurance for the Kitanglad Guard volunteers, the KGB. We're still working on it. We haven't really launch this, but we're going there now. The point is that they get honorarium, but very minimum. But they said they have put their lives at risk protecting the forest. So what they wanted is just a support in terms of an insurance, for their health and their lives. The new one, which we're very happy, is that we were able to convince our Cagayan de Oro Water District to allocate 4 to 6 million a year for restoration of the watersheds where they are basically getting their water. So again, it took us a number of lobbying, but we were finally able to convince them to do this restoration of the watersheds. Now, where we are working with the Netherlands Sustainable Water Fund, because they realize that what we're doing is something new. They're always used to working on the water security in terms of the hard infrastructure, pipes, modeling, GIS. But they wanted this project, and they have sort of like they made this one of their best ones, because they realized that we need to also work on the soft engineering part, the restoration that we're working. So they will support us. They have supported us until 2022. And in particular, we're working on a number of things, but this is where we have asked them for support, because we wanted to have a decision support tool. Again, it's science, but should be popularized. We wanted to show to the people that if these are the areas on the left with interventions, the water would go to the ground. But without interventions, we would have the flooding and all the water just going as surface runoff. So we wanted to have that technical tool where we show, like, look, we have restored this much hectares, but the impact of flooding is still there. So that's where we are. Hopefully we will have this. We're working with the MSU IIT group on this. So in terms of restoration, we still have a long way to go. We still have to cover so many areas. So, but at least we're going there. Let me just Let me just end with this video that we've made with my project, again, another bestseller, to show you how important vegetation. You see the box without with vegetation, the water immediately comes out as runoff and with soil. But with vegetation on the left, it's clear and it's slow and it continues to pour even if the water, like the rain in this case, has stopped. So yeah, so that's the end of my talk, and maayong gabi and good evening. Back to you, Reggie.
Oh, thank you so much for that very enlightening treatise on ecosystems-based approach, Dr. Hilly. We have actually appreciated your invaluable wisdom on the practical